What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the BlockHash podcast. Today, we have another exciting guest, Ram. He's the core contributor for OpenLedger, a data blockchain for AI focused on building specialized AI models that can be accessed by GenAI apps. Ram, welcome to the show, man. How you doing today?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Doing excellent.
Yeah.
Before we dive into OpenLedger, I'm sure people would love to know a little bit more about yourself, your background a little bit, how you got into the Web3 space. So what's your story, man?
So I started in the industry around 2017. Not as OG as possible, but I got into this because someone paid me in Bitcoin. So I,
Oh,
I got
nice.
intrigued. I got intrigued. I thought, okay, this is very interesting. Saw there is a huge gap for like blockchain-based development and some sort of R&D over there, right? So started building out a company along with my other co-founder, and we just started very small, like probably about like 10-member team. Worked with like one of the few large protocols that were there during the time, like header hashgraph and all these kind of blockchains. Understood that this is a huge need, started expanding, scaling. By 2021, we became about 200 plus employees. Started working with a lot of enterprises as well. Walmart's India subsidiary Flipkart was a huge client for us, and we've worked with them very closely. And then few other like Viacom, Pepsi, Cadbury's. These are some of the clients that we worked with to help them move from Web 2 to Web 3. And then been in the space building out, saw there is a need of data to be on chain, right? So there's always been that need. And also we saw that there is a niche around data for AI as well, right? There is compute, there is algos, models, and all that, and but data is one of the crucial points in AI. And we were seeing this convergence between AI and Web3. So that's what led us kind of start working on this. OpenLedger was a core contribution that we wanted to do because we were interested in the space. We were interested in bringing this to life, and here we are today, and I'm talking in front of you. So yeah, so that's sort of like my background and how I got into Web3 and why I'm doing OpenLedger.
How would you describe OpenLedger? Like, what are some of the core goals that you guys are trying to accomplish here?
Yeah, so as I called it, like OpenLedger is a data blockchain for AI. And the idea behind this is to bring decentralized trust for any kind of data providers to come collaborate and build specialized models on top of this, right? And the idea behind this came out of a simple thought and various in a study over the last year or so. What we kind of observed is that if AI is going to be, the electricity of the world, the next electricity of the world, where it's going to be a general purpose technology, where it's going to be used pretty much every other place possible, then you would need to have specialized models that can serve for every purpose that could be, right? Because AI is going to be used in places that we can't imagine, right? And would a couple of large language models be able to provide, solutions for that? I don't think so. And it's a natural understanding that's not possible. But what will happen is that large language models will exist and it will be there. They will be there for the context, and there will be specialized models where you would have very domain specific models serving along with these large language models for people to consume, apps to consume, agents to consume. So that is the thesis that we believed in, and for that, you would need to start with data, right? Data is the bottleneck of AI today, and as AI becomes, as I told you, much more general purpose, you would need domain-specific data for every particular domain that AI is getting into, so that you can have models which are very domain-specific, which are fine-tuned based on the data that we provide. So we started with that. So data is the first part of what we're doing, and then models, which are then fine tuned with this data. And the third is basically the agentic layer or the app layer, where anyone could use these models and build apps and agents on top of us. So these are three major components of OpenLedger. And what brings all of this together, what brings trust, is attribution. So we are building something called proof of attribution, with every inference that we get from the model, any agent or an app, when it infers an model, we make sure there is an attribution proof that we create, which attributes back the data providers for the data that they contributed. And that's the core thesis that connects all the three parts in our platform.
Yeah, I think most people are familiar with AI, obviously, but the data part, you make a good point, is something that I think definitely needs to be talked about more because there's so much data, being consumed by all these different AI models that are starting to come to light. So you guys are solving a really important use case. Can you elaborate a little bit further on, data attribution? Because I don't think people are as familiar with it. And then, maybe why in specifics it's crucial for that trust, verifiability, transparency, security.
So I think, like, if you take a look at it, right, most of the people have been dealing data with more as personal data, right? So personal data or user-owned data is significant, but it's not the only data that is there in the world, right? Large amount of data is actually with proprietary businesses, businesses who own their own data, which is where you have value, which is where most of the models today need improvisation in, right? So that is something that we're working on. If we want businesses to come forward and provide data and make models better and make models which are unique to a particular use case, you would need to make sure that you have a business model for the businesses to monetize themselves, right? The current business model looks very simple. They provide data. It's a one-time sale where they sell the data as it is, and all of the large language model companies buy these data and they use it for themselves. And whatever monetization that happens to their platform, the data providers are just given a one-time payment, right? They're not attributed back every time these models make money. So I think that has to break because that's not a long-term viable case, and we've seen that happen. Most of the data providers that provided data for these model companies that you see today, they're filing lawsuits saying that they would need to be paid better. They would need to have a long-term model out here. So, like if you take a look at, a lot of people have spoken about this, right? Internet, even though it was not very fair, but it has always been a two-way street, right? So if you see indexing platforms, they went ahead and indexed websites, but it got them traffic, right? It got them users. So you could, that users either converted as revenue or they ran ads so they can get money out of ads. But so it is always a two-way street. But in AI, we don't see that happening. It's always been one way where data is being consumed by all these AI models out there, but then there is just a one-time redeem over there. There is not an actual payment that goes on happening. So, but this is not a long-term thing. I don't think it's going to be viable for a very longer period. Businesses will not be interested after a point of time to like really contribute data, right? One way to build sort of like a model here is to make sure attribution happens, and attribution happens every time model makes money. So every time there is an inference that happens to a model, we want to make sure we attribute the data provided for the data that they contributed, right? And how do you do that is when you infer a model, there is an actual inference that comes out, the inference response, and then we create something called a proof of attribution. And in this proof of attribution, we provide weightage to each data provider. So based on the data that is being provided, we provide weightage to the data provider and make sure that it's recorded on chain. And we attribute accordingly to the weightage of each data provider. And since we record the data contribution on chain, since we record the user that contributes the data, we'll be able to show the provenance. We'll be able to see how the model is handling the data, and we'll be able to see how the inference happens. We'll be able to see what is the influence each data provider brings into that inference, and we'll be able to reward back based on the revenue that is made on that inference. And we provide the contract layer for this, we provide the infrastructure for this, and the execution is done by these model builders who get this data from the data providers. They make sure that they can attribute back. And then, attribution is one side, right? Once we attribute, once we pay, you pay rewards, that's good. But attribution can also lead to price discovery, right? Data providers today, if they get paid, And when they say if, it could be a business. So if a business gets paid and it got paid, let's say $1,000 for the quality of data that they provided, they will be able to know that they could monetize the data much better because they've got $1,000 now if they provide better quality of data because they know how this data is being handled and how the influence happened on that particular model and what was an actual attribution. So they will be able to improvise on the way of the quality of the data that they provide, and probably proceed to make much more higher than the $1,000 that they made, right? So that's where a marketplace begins. That's where price discovery happens. The third most important aspect is that we make the model much more explainable. Now, the data provider knows what's the value of his data, and a model builder knows what kind of data he needs to collect to have a good inference, right? Like an actual answer which you actually solve this problem for. He knows how these data is influencing a model, so he'll be able to decide. He, as in the company or a person, would be able to decide what kind of data they have to collect. So explaining the AI is very important. We all know that models today are a black box. We don't know how it works. We don't know what kind of data that goes in. One way that we solve this is to make sure that through data, we're able to explain the model. Through data, we're able to say how a model behaves to the data that we contribute. So the model builders today know how to receive data and what kind of data they would need. So there is better understanding of how the model works. So these are the three major aspects that happens once we attribute data providers, and then we provide them with rewards, price discovery, and then explanation.
Okay, got it.
Yeah.
So with better data attribution with OpenLedger, and you talked about these benefits a little bit here, but I want to kind of poke into it a little bit more. What are some of the improvements in terms of things like performance that you could see with an AI model or an AI application with the adoption of OpenLedger?
So we are currently running on a closed beta, right? So what we've done is that we've taken an experiment where we're going to announce it soon. I don't want to break it here, but we went ahead and we've taken a model, an open source model, fine-tuned it with a bunch of data sets. This is basically Solidity data sets, right? So a group of community has come forward and they're building a Solidity data net on top of us, where they're collecting Solidity data and then fine-tuning a model because they know there is a need to have a Solidity copilot, right? The current copilots in the market understand programming languages, but they're not an expert in Solidity, right? Because Solidity is a very niche language. So they understood there is a need for this. There's a specialized need. It's a domain-specific requirement. So they started building this data net where they started getting Solidity data, and they're building out a model. And what we've done is basically we went ahead and did attribution for that and figured out how much data is influencing this particular model and which particular data influences model based on every inference that came out, and we're able to provide a weightage, right? We're able to provide a weightage to show which data contributed the most useful data and what was the weightage for it and how that particular data was collected as well. We're able to figure that out. So what happens because of this is that you're able to streamline the way you collect data, right? Because when you train a large language model, even though the process is quite difficult, it takes a lot of time, but it's like quite open, right? What you do is that you collect the entire internet, you take one copy of the internet, and then you start fine-tuning a model. Now this model has all kind of data in it. It could be about 60% useless garbage data and another 40% useful data, but that's how large language models work because they need to have the context of the world, right? But when you are fine-tuning a model with specialized language models, you would need very domain-specific data, and this data has to be as easier and as simple and as clean as possible and as specific as possible so that the model that you're building does not hallucinate much, right? Because the reason they would choose a specialized model is that it's not going to hallucinate much. It's actually going to provide me the answer I'm looking for, right? So that is what we wanted to ensure. And one way to do that is to make sure that to figure out how this data is influencing this model. So once we are able to attribute that, we are able to figure out how this data is influencing this model, and we're able to provide that kind of weightage for the data that was contributed. And so this just made the process of getting data better, right? So the process of iterating and building models and getting it better, getting it much more streamlined as possible. And also, it also helped in terms of understanding how this model is going to behave, right? Once they started collecting the data sets of this particular kind, it kind of gave us an idea about how this model is going to behave as well. So that's one way that attribution like really helped us. Another way is obviously once we go testnet and mainnet, we will know that this obviously is rewarding people. Once they, as I told you before, once we reward users for contributing data, or once we reward businesses for contributing data, there is price discovery that happens that enables people to come forward and contribute data and stuff like that. So we always kind of bring this analogy between YouTube's pre-monetization era, when YouTube was not being monetized. There was large amount of junk videos over there, right? The useless videos where people were like experimenting and putting in a bunch of stuff. And once YouTube brought in monetization, the partner program, you could see that YouTube had better quality of videos. Like the YouTubers became a profession. Most important thing is that businesses came forward and started contributing content to YouTube, right? So because they know that if they use YouTube, they could monetize their content now. It's not going to be available at free of cost. So they saw this as an additional option to go ahead and monetize, and they trusted the platform, and they contributed content to that. But in OpenLedger, what we're building is a trustless process, right? We want to make sure that we use decentralization as much as possible, so anyone across the globe can go ahead. It could be an individual contributor who goes ahead and contributes data, or it could be a business which contributes its proprietary data, but they still have trust that the data they contributed was used for a model. They're able to see the entire provenance, and once it is used in a model and there is an inference that happens to that model, they know that they can track that the data was actually used on inference, and they could see the weightage of their data, and they could see that they're getting paid for that, right? There is that the provenance that is being built, and that is what I see happening as well. So what happened like post YouTube era is what data open source data market needs now. You need to have a platform where businesses can come forward and contribute data, um, good quality of data, proprietary data, data that you don't get from the internet, which is very useful, so that models can be built out of that. And then we make sure that these businesses get attributed for that and get paid for that, and they know how it works. And all of this is where attribution, always call this as a center point of a platform, because it connects all of this together. It brings in trust, it brings in reward, it also brings in that marketplace where people can discover price and they can contribute more data and make money. So yeah, so that's sort of like how I would say attribution is benefiting data providers and various other players in our ecosystem.
That's fascinating. When can businesses start contributing that data to OpenLedger? Are you guys in beta, you said? Testnet's coming soon?
Yeah, so we are planning our testnet in about probably a couple of weeks or so. So, and we would do it as a phased manner. We would start with, the data nets. Obviously, that's the first phase. We will let people contribute data, and then we'll open up models and options where they can start fine tuning models or host models, whichever models they have, they can come forward and host that. And then the third piece is the app or the agentic layer, where they would start building agents and apps on top of us, or use our inference services for any kind of AI services that is required.
If there's a developer or group of developers or even a company wanting to, build with OpenLedger, is there any resources or information for them that they can kind of get access to help like kind of prepare for that test net that's coming up in a few weeks?
Yeah, so we will be announcing our testnet documents and also our testnet program, so they could join our Discord channel and follow our socials as well. And this is where we'll be announcing on how to participate in the testnet. So there is opportunity for the end consumers, the retail, to also participate, and also businesses to participate in our testnet. So we, as I told you, it's a phased manner, and we would start with the data nets where data contributors can come and participate initially, and then model builders who see these data nets and the data that is accumulated in a platform, whichever models that they think would be useful can be built on top of us post that. And then the third is where agents, once we have enough models available, we would encourage agents to come and build on top of us, and we would have these documents available in our platform probably soon, and it can be accessed as well.
Do you guys have any existing partnerships that you can mention at the moment? Anything you guys have tested the waters with or put any use cases together, like as some examples?
Yeah, so if you take a look at OpenLedger as a platform itself, as I told you, right? So since there are three major stakeholders, the data providers, model creators, and the agents or apps, we are bringing partners who can help out all of these builders, right? And starting with GPU partners, so we're partnering with a bunch of GPU companies. And the major aspect behind this is to provide GPUs for fine tuning. So fine tuning their models with the data that's collected in a platform. And also, we will be partnering with these GPU providers to let the model builders use them as hosts. So they will start hosting these models in these GPU providers in front. And also, we would work with various data labeling companies. So we collect raw data, right? So we can provide infrastructure for data labeling companies to come forward and provide their services so that the raw data is then labeled and then processed as well. We'll also be working with other tooling companies which provide data cleaning and data processing toolkits. Those are as an important partnership. We see us as an ecosystem, right? We provide the protocol and the infrastructure for all of this to be orchestrated together, but partners are the ones who provide the tools to make this happen. So data cleaning processes and all of that will happen in our third party partners. And then another important aspect is inference providers. So we will work with various hosting services to provide inference as well. There is also partnerships that we are coming up with decentralized inference. So whoever needs decentralized inference, they could use that. We will also be working with certain models provider as well. So like open source model providers, we're working with Meta's Llama. So we're partnering with them, and a couple of other opportunities are open as well. So model providers are one, and as I told you, and the last one is where agents, right? So we are also partnering with a lot of agent companies so that they can enable their agents to use these models that are built on top of us. Today, all the agent companies are using generic large language models, and most of them are just system prompts, right? But once we see this market to grow, once we see agents becoming one of the most important aspects of life, because there's going to be agents for trading, they're going to be agents for doing your personalized work, they're going to be agents for governance, they're going to be agents for booking a hotel for you and stuff like that. So in that case, you would want models which are much more proficient, models which are capable of doing more than what a generic language model will be able to do it. So you would need specialized specialized models for that. And in that case is where we envision all these agent companies to work with us. And same goes with anyone who's building an AI app, right? All these app builders who are building using AI as a solution inside them, they would need specialized models, and that's where we would encourage them to use the models that are being built on top of us. So yes, so these are like the straightforward, ecosystem or partnerships that can happen on top of us. Um, there are other probably like collateral or ancillary partnerships that can happen as well. A bunch of people are looking to build sort of um, like a liquidity platform on top of us to enable liquidity between models. There are another few platforms who we've discussed where they wanted to tokenize the models so people could invest on these models and stuff like that. So those are other collateral partnerships that can happen as well.
And I hear a lot about AI agents these days too. I swear over the last couple of months, it has just exploded in popularity.
Yeah, so I think it's sometimes I think it's more hype than actual substance. Within certain cases, this is very interesting use cases that we have observed as well. Hopefully, it doesn't become another speculative thing, right? So that's one thing with the industry. We don't want things to become speculative, and then there's a lot of negative energy that goes around. But I believe agents itself, right, is it's a huge thing. I think if you're for every domain, there'll be an agent coming forward, Agents would be probably one of the biggest on-chain users. I think every layer one, layer two has to adapt for agents because I don't think humans will be interacting on the blockchain as much because there is one thing, right? I also read a lot of people talk about this, like humans believe in trust within each other, like I could trust you, you could trust me. We have our own social trust that is there, but agents are built on the internet, right? So agents are a digital human being, so I mean digital being, and you would need to have digital wall gardens for them. You would need to have blockchains as a wall gardens to ground them. So I think that's where I would see a lot of layer twos and layer ones should be supporting agents and building mechanisms and then processes to make sure that agents are grounded and also necessary ramping mechanisms so that agents can actually make use of blockchain and do their trade and do their executions and whatever that is possible. So agents is definitely interesting, right? I think it's going to becoming one of the biggest topics of 2025 at least, and I would see that pretty much taking over most of our activities, and us just having fun conversations and thinking about what to build next. So yeah.
Thinking about what's coming next, you mentioned testnet coming in the next few weeks or so. What's coming in 2025 that you can reveal in terms of your guys' roadmap with OpenLedger? Anything in particular that stands out that users, devs, companies should be aware of or keep an eye for?
Yeah, so we are definitely pushing the testnet hard because it's been a lot of months in development. So we'll be pushing the testnet pretty hard. I so the mainnet probably we look at Q1 end or Q2. That's the idea. And but until then, we would be making sure that people give feedback to our platform, test the platform, and we want to make sure that we reward people who contribute to our platform and test our platforms as well. So that's what is going to happen for the next couple of months. And then once mainnet, I think a lot of product uh, reveal will happen. So the actual mainnet will enable people to build data nets and build models and stuff like that. But there are other tools that, as I was telling you, right, that we are partnering with and we are building ourselves will also be unveiled as well. So next year will be more building and then announcing that and then showcasing that as well. So that's what we are in hope for 2025, and it's going to be very exciting here. Either if it's a bull market or not, generally in tech, I think there's a lot of stuff that has been happening over the last 1 or 2 years, especially in AI, and I think all of that will start reaching the masses in 2025, 2026. I think it's going to be a very interesting year, and I'm sure that Web3 will also be very interesting, and then providing services for that. Yeah.
Awesome. Where would you direct people to get set up and ready for testnet when it comes? And then where you guys' socials? Do you guys have community as well? Where would you send people?
Yeah, so we are gonna announce it probably, as I told you, in a couple of days. I'm not sure whenever this is going on air, but I'm not sure if it's gonna be already live. But yeah, so we'll be going to announce this pretty soon. So they could start following our socials, our Discord channels. They could start following our whatever happening on our website as well. We make sure that it's visible in our website as well. So, probably if you can help us showcase our Discord channels and socials, I think people can go ahead and follow that. So that's where we will start announcing it. So hopefully in the next couple of days, we'll be able to announce that. We're just making sure that we have everything ready so that people, when they use our platform, they feel comfortable and they're able to access it as well.
Awesome. Well, keep me posted, man. We'll make sure all the links and everything's in the description for the episode below so they can easily find it. But yeah, other than that, just let me know. Ram, this has been a really good episode. Appreciate you taking the
Yeah.
time to fill us in on what you guys are doing with OpenLedger, and very excited to see what you guys do in the space.
Absolutely. I enjoyed having this conversation with you. I think I was able to tell people what we're doing thanks to you. So thanks for the time, and hopefully we will catch up soon.